and I am the Career Services Assistant Director here at SUNY Oswego. I know you guys are just joining in. Don't worry, you haven't missed anything yet. We are just starting. I'm going to go ahead and give us another minute or so as people are popping in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and we have a couple slides prepared that I'll go ahead and show at the beginning. So as you guys are joining us, you will see that we are going to start in just a minute. So feel free to get situated for an awesome panel with our graduate studies team here at Oswego. All right, I see some participants still kind of joining us. We'll give you guys about another minute or so to keep popping into the session, and then we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We have lots of fun content to cover today, lots of things to learn about graduate school, and hopefully some information that you will take away that'll be really helpful. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. If people keep trickling into the webinar, that's perfectly fine. But we wanted to kind of go ahead and kick off our panel and our session today, 10 things you need to know about graduate school, but you're afraid to ask or possibly not even sure what questions to ask. So we have our graduate studies team here with us today, and we are extremely thankful for them and their time. Really, they're going to be able to take this session and run with it, and you guys are going to have the opportunity to ask kind of some further questions, but just a couple housekeeping items. This is week 2 of a 5-week program. Hopefully you know that. If not, this is a program that's been started last week and is going until the end of January. In the chat, you will find the link to our Imagine 2021 webpage with information on all the other sessions that we are leading, as well as the link to the checklist. So at the end of each week, you can view the checklist online, and every Thursday we're going through and looking for students that have completed at least 3 items on that checklist and who have tagged a couple of their friends using the hashtag or the @HigherOz on Instagram. And we will actually be choosing a few students. I think we're choosing 5 each week to win some of these awesome prizes. I think so far the blankets have been the most common, probably because we're in Oswego. That should be no surprise to everyone. But just a reminder about the checklist as well as some of the other sessions. So keep an eye out for that information in the chat. As we go along today, please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A portion of the webinar. Our panelists, as well as myself as a host, will be reviewing those questions, and there will be time at the end for us to get to some of your questions. So please use the Q&A feature for questions, and then keep an eye on the chat for links and additional information or some summary points that we put in there throughout the session. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce each of our panelists, and then I'm going to actually turn it right over to them, and they're going to go ahead and take it away. So this is Kristen Eichhorn. She is the Dean of Graduate Studies. She's on the call today. Thank you so much for being with us. We also have Laura Spenceley, who's the Associate Dean of the Graduate Studies. We have Sharon Griffin, who is the Graduate Admissions Counselor. And then last but not least, we have Michaela Smith, who is the graduate assistant that actually works with this fabulous team of ladies in the graduate studies area. So Michaela, I'm gonna go ahead and hand it right over to you. You should be all set.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Christine. I'm so happy to be here because honestly, I just know it can be so confusing to navigate the world of graduate school. And when I was a student in undergrad and even after that, I had so many questions. My friends had so many questions. I got questions today when I posted that I was doing this. So today I just hope to pose some of those questions to our panelists and help us understand the graduate school process. So what I'm actually going to start with is I'm going to ask you guys to just quickly put your undergraduate major, your class year, And if you have a potential area of interest in graduate school, or if you're undecided, just put that in the chat for us if you would. And thank you so much for that participation. And let's just start with probably the most common question that I get. And that is, do I even qualify for graduate school? Am I smart enough to go to graduate school? Am I graduate school material? And Laura, I thought you would be so great to answer that for us.
Well, thanks for kicking us off, Michaela and Christine, Gary, for your welcome to the opportunity to chat. Greetings, everyone. You know, I think this is a really common question, but a somewhat challenging question to answer in the graduate space. Graduate school is a little bit different than the application process to undergraduate programming. And so one of the things that I'd encourage you to think about in selecting a graduate program is what you're really hoping to get out of that graduate degree. Asking questions around how would it support your future career goals? And also whether the programs that you're looking at, whether they're master's level programs, a graduate certificate, a doctoral program, or something in between, are going to offer you the experiences and outcomes that are going to help you meet those long-term career goals. In the graduate space, it's much less about being smart and much more about selecting a program that's a really good fit for your previous experiences and your personal and professional goals. We'll talk later today in our conversation about some of those kind of recommended minimum considerations for things like GPA or test scores, but I'd encourage you to get out of the mindset of, am I smart enough, and more into the mindset of, is this the right fit for me and what I'm hoping to get out of graduate school?
Yeah, such a great answer. And when you said goals and, you know, talking about the future and stuff, I started thinking about another question we get really often, which is, do I need a graduate degree? And if so, should I go right away? You know, should I go right after undergrad? So Kristen, I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Michaela. And once again, welcome everybody, and thanks for being here. Yeah, these are questions we seem to get quite often is, do I need a graduate degree? And I think a lot of students, depending on their career path, they do need advanced education. And so we talk to those students that are interested in education. And if you want to be certified in New York, eventually you will need a master's degree. Those of you that are interested in business and see yourself moving up a career ladder into management, most likely will need a graduate degree. Those of you that want to take on leadership roles in industry, eventually will need a graduate degree. I mean, most of us on this call that work in higher education will tell you most of the jobs at SUNY Oswego require a master's degree. So I think that, you know, trying to envision or visualize yourself and what your career path looks like will help you determine whether you need a graduate degree. But more often, Michaela, I talk to students who want a graduate degree. And this comes from students who are interested in specializing in a particular content. They get to the end of their undergraduate career and there's still a yearning to learn a specialization, to research a particular area, to become an expert in a particular area. And so they want to learn next to, they're not quite finished yet. They've made it to the end of their undergraduate career, but are looking for some more applied experiences, working side by side with faculty on research. Maybe they want an applied internship experience where they're able to dive into data and do some more exploratory things. They're just not quite done yet, and they haven't rounded out that level of expertise or competence that they want. And so graduate education provides a beautiful platform to be able to take additional coursework at the advanced level, working side by side with faculty and industry partners. So I think that this is an important question, is to determine what it is that you need versus sort of what it is that you want to get out of higher education at the graduate level. Oftentimes students ask me, is it better to go right away, or is it better to get work experience and go back? And you know, this is a very individualized question. So this is where your faculty and the resources and career services, the career coaches, where you can kind of have these conversations about what is best for you. I would say it's 50-50. Some people, the students come to me and say, listen, I'm in an academic rhythm. I know how to write papers. I know how to research. I've developed relationships with faculty. I'm in this academic lifestyle. I'm in this rhythm. I want to continue, and I want to dive deeper into this content material while everything is well, I don't have a bunch of other external pressures on me right now. I just want to keep going because eventually I know I will need this. And once you get a graduate degree, no one can take it away from you. So it sits on your resume forever, right? There's other folks that I talk to that say, I need a break. I need to step away. I need to go and work a little bit and gain some experience so that when I sit in the graduate classroom, I feel like I can offer up some more worldly answers, more worldly perspectives based on my work experience. So I think it really is an individualized choice, but there's costs and rewards to both pathways. And so I think it's really important to understand where you are in your life and the goals that you've set for yourself in your life that have to do with higher education, but also your personal lives. We do see in research that once students do step away, their likeliness to come back does reduce, and particularly for women. So I think, you know, some students do continue to leverage the faculty relationships for letters of recommendations, leverage their work their senior year to help them get into graduate school. So I think there's definitely some strengths from going on right away while you're in the rhythm of it and you have the openness and flexibility to complete those academic pursuits, but it's not for everybody. So I think talking with faculty and talking with the resources around campus to figure out where you fit in that conversation is a really helpful tip.
Yeah, thank you so much. Such an important reminder how personalized it is for everybody, but achievable. And it reminded me too, sort of talking about that timing. What kind of timeline are we on in general when we talk about applying to graduate school? When in your undergrad should you start thinking about it? How long is the admissions process? How early should I apply? And Sharon, I thought you'd just be perfect for that question.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, everybody. As it was mentioned in the introduction, I am the graduate admissions counselor. So I do speak with a lot of undergraduate students who are just starting the process and trying to understand when it's appropriate to begin this process. I saw in the chat that we had some folks answer that initial question that was asked. And we have some students on here who are first-year students all the way through students who are last-year students. And so the answer is it's never too early to start asking questions, but you certainly, it's never too late either. So whether you're an incoming student, a first year student, or you're in your second semester senior year, you know, there's still time to explore these different options for you. If you have a goal and you have an interest in pursuing graduate studies, it's never too early to start asking questions. Talk with your advisor, talk to career services. If you have a path, a plan, a goal of where you'd like to see yourself, and a part of that pathway is graduate school, it's a great idea to have those conversations sooner rather than later, because there may be prerequisite courses that you can take. I noticed that someone in the chat mentioned that they are doing the Bachelor's Plus program, which is fantastic. So that's a great way to take advantage of taking graduate level courses while you're still an undergrad. And a lot of those things need to have some pre-planning. So the sooner you can kind of start those conversations with your advisors and faculty, the better. Also, you may be completely undecided about what type of school that you want to go to. And we will talk about this a little bit later about how to start the whole research process. But that has to be taken into consideration too as well when you're talking about timing. Now, as far as the actual application and applying to the school, each school has different deadlines. Some are rolling admission, some have exact deadlines. It depends on the institution, and even within the institution, it may differ from program to program. So it's important that you do your research and you know what the deadlines are so that you build in that time frame. But I will say that the earlier you apply, typically, you know, at some point in your senior year, if you are going to go straight from undergrad to graduate, then the earlier you start applying, you can get through that admission process. That will allow you time to be considered for more funding opportunities. And again, we're going to talk about funding opportunities a little bit later on, but those are just a few things to keep in mind as you're talking about timing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sharon. Yeah, I'm hearing how important it is to research. And I think, you know, start planning about a year early. It might not take that long, but that sounds like a good time frame for people to kind of keep in mind depending where they're at. And I heard you say researching so many times, and that just brings me to the other question that we get quite a bit. Where do I start? You know, how do I go about researching? How will I know if I found the right program? And Kristen, I thought you'd have some good insight there.
Oh, thanks, Michaela. Yeah, I mean, I was one of these students who was, first generation graduate student, and I had no idea how to figure out what programs I was qualified for, eligible for, how programs differed across schools. And so I'm particularly sensitive to meeting with students and helping them get to a place where they feel really comfortable about the decisions that they're making. One of the questions I had as an undergrad is, if I major in communication as an undergrad, can I go forward in an MBA? It sounds like what I'm reading in the chat, a lot of you have already thought about, and this is what I love about today's undergrads is, they're already thinking about how to build those transferable skill sets, right? So I do an undergrad in international, and then I move over and take some business courses, and you're really trying to round out your expertise and not thinking about graduate education from a very linear perspective, business undergrad, MBA, but thinking about how you do your undergrad in one area and then maybe doing your graduate education in another area to really round out what you can offer a company or a discipline. So there's basically 4 things that when I meet with students, I ask them to ask themselves. Oftentimes students come in my office and I say, well, what have you done already in terms of researching? And they'll say, well, I Googled stuff and I put some things and I'm just not sure how to sort it all out. So what I do is I ask them to step back from that and really ask themselves, 4 questions. And we kind of walk it through together, but I'll tell you what those 4 questions are. One is, what are your deal breakers? Do you have any deal breakers? Like I have to be in New York State, or it's definitely this, I definitely need an MST or an MBA. I definitely need this degree. I definitely need to go full-time, or I definitely need to go part-time. I definitely need an online program. What are the things that you think are your deal breakers, and put, make sure you write those out so we can stay true to those. And then the second question I ask them is, what do you need from the program? Like, do you want more research experience? Do you want to expand your professional network? Do you want more applied experiences? Do you want, do you want to work next to faculty who have a particular expertise in a particular niche area? Like what is it that you need from this program so that we can find, and Laura talked about it in the first question, but we want to find a program that's a good fit. And so in your research, you're going to be wanting to not only look at the names of the graduate programs, you're going to want to be looking at the curriculum, and that means looking at every single course that you'll need to see if it's a good fit. And then the third thing you want to look at is, the faculty. What are their research areas? What is their expertise? Where are they publishing? And making sure it is what you want it to be. The third question I always ask students is, do you have a financial plan? Are you planning on taking out student loans? And at the graduate level, it's really clear cut. It's not need-based, everybody gets the same as long as they're in full-time graduate matriculated programs. You all get the same $20,000 each year, so you can plan. Are you planning on getting some kind of scholarship? Are you planning on taking out loans? What is your financial plan? And how does that line up to the cost of the program? And then the last thing I ask students to ask themselves is, make a list of people who can help you. And start with your faculty. Whose offices are you gonna, virtually knock on and say, hey, tell me about your graduate experience. Where would you recommend I go to graduate school? So what I'm noticing in the chat box is that some of you are interested in programs that we offer here at SUNY Oswego, and some of you are looking at programs perhaps that we don't offer in law school and medical school and other things. So, but it's not to say that all of your mentors here can't help you. In graduate studies, we help people apply to graduate programs, whether they're our own or somewhere else. We're willing to look at essays, give you advice, but it's best to really meet with your faculty and pick their brains, go to career services, meet with the coaches, and make a laundry list of people that can help you. You will need their help in terms of letters of recommendations, having them read your essay, and to use the resources that are surrounding you here at SUNY Oswego. So everyone's here to help. And I think the more feedback that you can get on these application process, the better likeliness that you'll have, make a good decision and a decision that's a great fit for what you want. So those were my 4 questions, Michaela. I usually say, what are your deal breakers? What do you need from a program? What's the financial plan here? And making a list of who can help you.
Yes, I love it. And after we think about those 4 questions, that leads me sort of right into, okay, I've decided I want to apply to grad school. What do I need for myself in order to be ready to apply? And Sharon, as the admissions counselor, I thought that would be perfect for you to give us some insight into.
Absolutely, thank you. And if I can just add to Kristen's last question, reach out to the graduate admissions office at these different institutions that you're thinking about too. Once you make that list of schools that kind of meet those criteria that Kristen just mentioned, just today I talked to a prospective student, and when she told me what her goals were and what she was looking to do, man, she just lined up completely with one of our programs, and it was just refreshing to know she clearly had done her research and knew what our program was compared to some other institutions, but then had some follow-up questions. So by having that conversation, we were able to make sure that it was going to be the right fit before she moved too much further into the process. And so once you decide that you want to apply, there's a few basic things that every institution is going to require across the board, regardless of where you're looking at going to school. So obviously your official transcripts from your previous institutions, a statement of interest or essay, some schools call it a letter of interest, some call it a purpose statement, but basically it's your opportunity to talk about your fit with the program and to build your case, to make your case as to why you're a good candidate for their program. Letters of recommendation, again, may differ from school to school in terms of how many they require and they have specific people that they want to see letters of recommendation from, whether it be faculty or internship advisors or things of that nature. And in many cases, standardized tests will also be a requirement. Again, this can differ from institution to institution and even from program to program within an institution. So it's important that you reach out to the schools that you're applying to, check and see what standardized tests that they require, and if they have a minimum score or any other parameters around that to help you as you're preparing for it. And then again, most schools do offer or require an application fee. So those are kind of the basic things that you can expect to be required as you move forward in the process. Your official transcripts, an essay or a statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, and then in some cases, the standardized tests.
Yeah, can I just butt in? Because I know that Ben had a question in here that I think dovetails nicely with what you were saying, Sharon, and his question has to do with what are the advantages of staying within SUNY for graduate school? And the 2 things that come to my mind right away, Ben, are 1, price point. I mean, you heard me talk about what is your financial plan. You know, you want to pick a school that has good, solid value, you know, where you're getting an excellent education at the best value. And so SUNY schools do provide that price point that I think that's set in Albany. So I think that cost is a benefit, but also we've been talking a lot about letters of recommendation, using your network. You have to remember, every one of your faculty member, I mean, just on this call alone, we probably touch over a dozen graduate schools. So, you know, I went to West Virginia for my master's. I got my Ph.D. at the University of Miami. I ran a grad program at Towson. I run one now at SUNY Oswego. I know all the grad deans across SUNY. So my network of people, just me alone, you know, we know people across SUNY, so we can call people up and say, you know, I saw this on your website, and help you liaison with some of these graduate programs. So I think that that's really important too. As you're meeting with faculty, ask them where they went to school, ask them what that, you know, who's that program built for? Do you think someone like me would be successful in this program? Each program is slightly different, has different characteristics, and certain students do better at certain programs depending on what your need is. So I think some of the advantage of going to SUNY is price point, and the other one is the SUNY network, is that most of us all know each other. It tends to be a small world. So those are 2 things that stick out for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that. And I was also thinking, as both of you were speaking, and Sharon, you touched on it, just the importance of reaching out to those institutions. I know just throughout my journey, I, as an AmeriCorps volunteer, had been able to get an application fee waived at times. So even if there's other considerations in there, you still might be able to, connect with somebody and find out a way to get that need met. And as we are thinking about applying, I know so many people ask, how do graduate schools decide who's going to get admitted and what matters on these applications? And Laura, I know that is very much in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I love this question. I don't want to steal any of Sharon's thunder. I know she's going to talk about some of the differences in our spaces in undergraduate and graduate admissions. But first, I want to tackle that they word. Who is the they in the graduate admission space? The they is us faculty very often. And it's important to recognize that will look a little bit different institution to institution, but almost always the faculty and sometimes the students who work within those programs are working to evaluate candidates for admission to the program. It's important to recognize that graduate admissions is typically a holistic process. We're not looking for one particular score or one particular GPA. There may certainly be minimums that exist or kind of recommended ranges. But the way that I tend to think about it, and I should say my world is school psychology, I've been living and working in that graduate space for about 10 years now, is nearly every student who applies to my program is phenomenal. They have a set of strengths, they've got great life experiences, they've got these wonderful life stories, and certainly a passion for helping students. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be successful in our program or that our program has the right opportunities to help them meet their future goals. So I'm going to come back to this word fit that you heard me say in my kind of early answer. Is in thinking through admissions, we as faculty are really invested in our students' success. We want to put together the puzzle of students and kind of constellation of experiences that's going to create diverse classrooms and that is going to capture those students who are most likely to be successful, that we see graduating from our programs, that we see going into the field and doing great work with children and families. I'll give you a quick example of a type of really great student who I'm unfortunately not usually able to admit. And that's a student who may prepare wonderful materials, but in their statement of interest or in some of their letters of rec, there may be signals that they're really looking to go into, let's say, a private practice situation. As school psychologists at the master's level in New York, that's not an option for us under our current certification laws. And so for those students, it's typically not that they're not admittable to the program or don't have a great background, but if I were to admit them to the program, I'm giving them kind of a false promise that I can help them fulfill their future goals. So in those cases, and I think it's a really good example of the case that just because you're a great student and just because you've got excellent experiences doesn't necessarily mean the programs that you apply to are going to be the right fit for you. And that's so much what programs are looking for, is admitting the students who are diverse, who are going to enrich the dialogue, but also all likely to be successful in that academic and applied space.
And Kristen, what about you? I know you are familiar with this world as well. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about what you look for.
Yeah, I think that what Laura said was so very important. I know that when I review graduate applications, I'm looking for people not just to tell me how wonderful they are, but to demonstrate how wonderful they are. So in graduate school, we're really looking for really excellent writers. So if people give you an opportunity to write an essay, so oftentimes students get focused on the answering the question to the essay, but they forget that they're demonstrating themselves through the essay, their writing competency. And you can rest assured that every faculty member that reads that essay will be looking at your grammar, spelling. The one story that we sort of laugh about in the admission space and communication is that the graduate program that I was overseeing, we were looking for strong writers, particularly those that focused in public relations. And we would have at least one or two candidates in every admission cycle that would refer to public relations as pubic relations. And so it would give us a chuckle, but it would also give us pause, right? Is this a person that checked their work? Pubic relations is obviously not going to be picked up by spell check. So you need to be able but public relations also tries to attract people who are very detail oriented. So making these small errors in the application process do tell a large story. And so that's why I say use your networks, take your time, start early, review, get feedback, review again, but don't take anything lightly in the application process. They ask for a resume, build a strong resume. If they're asking you for an essay, make sure that essay is demonstrating fit and competency. So that's the stuff where I feel like your professional network can really help support you in this. You should never submit an essay that at least 2 or 3 people I haven't read already. So those are some things that I think that I hear myself telling students. And oftentimes when students are denied from graduate programs, I'll meet with them. And some, you know, Laura will tell you, people with 4.0 GPAs have been denied from graduate programs. Sometimes I sit with students and I have them read their essay and I say, you know, this is what we asked for and this is what you submitted. And we kind of talk through maybe some of the holes in the writing that they didn't see the first time that may help them going after a second application. So I think one of the lessons here is that, you know, use your network, use your feedback, and don't be afraid, as Sharon has already said, you know, to reach out to the Graduate Studies office for help and other networks and resources that if you have questions on. So that's a little bit of a story that I hear myself saying that I think that students enjoy hearing about.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I'm hearing, you know, let yourself shine, reach out where you need it, but make sure you do your homework and be thorough. And that kind of reminds me of just some of the differences, like you were speaking about, in graduate school versus undergrad and what ways it's different across the board. And I thought maybe we could start with Sharon and just giving us insight into how maybe the admissions process is a little different.
Sorry about that. So I think that there's a couple of main differences between the admissions process at the undergraduate level versus the graduate level. And the two that I really want you to be able to take away is, one is, obviously when you're applying to graduate school, you are applying for a specific program that is focused on fit. Again, we've used that word several times today. So if you take nothing away from today, you'll take away the concept of finding the right fit. So making sure that the program you are applying and want to pursue is the best fit for you. So again, I'm going to reiterate what Kristen just said in terms of the essay. You know, this is your opportunity in the admissions process that's very different than at the undergraduate level, is that the review process is done at the graduate level in what we call a decentralized admission. So at the undergrad, it's a centralized admission. So you apply to your applications go into a system and they are sent to the individual schools. You're probably writing the same essay for all the schools you've applied to, and it's kind of a generic essay. An admissions counselor reviews it, they make a decision. At the graduate level, it comes in through our office and processed through our office, and we assist you with that whole you know, making sure you have all the requirements met before it goes to review, but then it goes to the faculty. So it's going to a very strategic group of folks who are going to be reviewing other candidates just for that specific program. And so they are going to be taking a very focused view at your application, going back to what Laura said earlier about holistic application process. It is not going to be just, do they meet this criteria? Do they have this GPA? Did they score this on a standardized test? So that's what's really the main difference between the two in the admissions process. So you can be rest assured that your application is going to be taken into full consideration with every aspect of it. And so the other big difference would be that in the admissions process at undergrad, you kind of had a straightforward application process. Like I said, you apply either through the Common App or the SUNY app to several schools at one time. That's not how it works at the graduate level. And even, as I mentioned earlier, within institutions, there may be different criteria for different programs. So again, do your research. Deadlines may differ. And so you just need to be aware of all those different facets as you move through.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And Laura, I'm curious some of what you're thinking about as we talk about the differences between undergrad and graduate school.
Yeah, it really is a distinct process. And I did see through the chat, I do want to make sure we get Michael Jean's question answered. The GRE is the graduate record exam. You can think about it as kind of a rough parallel to an SAT or an ACT for admission to the graduate space. It's what we're talking about when we talk about scores. There are some other admissions measures that you may be asked, scores for which you may be asked to provide. Depending on your area of interest or specialty, you may see things like the MCAT, you may see things like the GMAT, the Miller Analogies test. These are generally considered kind of the high stakes test for graduate level admissions. And so you'll typically see those kind of requirements or admissions requirements listed on programs' websites. And thank you, we've got some information going into the chat box there. We can certainly talk more about that at the end, but it is another difference that's worth calling out. One of the things, I'm going to shift away from the admission space to focus a little bit more on the differences between graduate education from undergraduate. And certainly, I mean, no disrespect, but they are distinct. Graduate programs are much more intimate. In my world, we admit 10 to 15 students per year. So the entire group of students across the 3-year program is about 45. If we contrasted that with my psychology colleagues across campus, that would be 1/2 section of one of their large classes. So what comes from that is a really intimate opportunity to get to know faculty as future mentors and future colleagues. What I tend to say to my students from day one is, I'm training you to be my future colleagues and connections in the field. And my hope is that the relationship kind of matures and cultivates over the period of time, and then we stay in contact, because our alumni are the ones that help us stay current. They help us get our students placements. They help us maintain that program to first job. They supervise our interns and whatnot. But even more importantly, I think one of the shifts that I see my students having to make is understanding that they can rely on us as mentors, that asking questions isn't a sign of weakness, but a signal that they are invested in their future success and really thinking about, how do I make this the right fit for me? You know, even though my students all graduate with school psychology degrees, their path through their graduate program will differ. They'll take some different courses or look for different experiences. And it's through that relationship with their advisor and their mentor that they're able to build those experiences, so that when they're applying to that first position, they're really able to create their own pathway into the field and individualize it in that space. It may sound silly, but students call me by my first name and have my cell phone number. That's the level of intimacy that we're talking about. And I think that's pretty consistent across graduate programs. We're invested in your success, and we're here to train you as our future colleagues and experts in the field.
Yeah, Laura, that's such a great reminder to me what a great environment it is. And I speak very specifically from my experience. I am in the mental health counseling program, and I came back to school later, was out for a long time after getting my bachelor's degree. But I just agree with so much of what you said about the differences with the support and that connection between the faculty. And it was just a great reminder that they've really selected us to be here in the program just as much as we wanted to be in that graduate program. And they're going to be very invested in our future, our growth, and you can really feel that support. And I'm reminded too of just a big difference for me personally in the program I'm in, but it differs what this will be, but the time commitment. You know, I'm in a program that requires you to have an internship that will take up almost as much time as a full-time job, and that's with doing classes and that type of stuff. So just paying really close attention to what you're going to have available as far as time. You know, do you have children or other commitments and things like that? That was a big, big difference from undergrad for me, for sure, one that comes to mind. And I feel like this is really leading us really nicely into, you know, now we've kind of made the decision. We know what we need, what we're going to get out of grad school, and how am I going to pay for graduate school? What about my undergraduate loans, and how do student loans work at the graduate level? And we touched on this a little, but Sharon, I thought maybe you could give us a little more information there.
Sure, I'll be happy to start us off with that. And this is probably one of the biggest questions that I get is how am I going to pay for graduate school? And even just an understanding of how the whole graduate financial aid works. So Kristen alluded to it earlier. First of all, once you're enrolled in a graduate program as a matriculated student, your undergraduate loans are deferred. So if you're carrying debt still from your undergraduate, which most people are, then you are able to defer those loans. So you get a little bit of a reprieve from having to pay those back during that time. The other big difference is that student loans work differently at the graduate level in that you are able to qualify for up to $20,500 per year. And you must be a matriculated graduate student full-time in a program. Now, at graduate level, full-time is 9 credit hours. To be eligible for any type of loan is 6 credit hours. So you may not qualify for the full $20,500 if you're only taking 6 credit hours. But as long as you are matriculated in a program and taking at least 6 credit hours, you can qualify for some federal student loans. And like I said, 9 credits and above is full-time, and you can qualify for $20,500 in loans per year. And this is different than the undergrad. At the undergrad, you're capped at $5,500 per year. So it is a much larger amount that you can take out. It certainly at SUNY Oswego, it covers more than the cost of tuition, but it does build in that extra buffer that you may need. As Michaela was saying, graduate level work can be very challenging and time consuming. So if you are going full-time, the likelihood that you can balance that with a full-time job is really not very realistic. And so they build in a little more of a cushion in loans to help you with support. But having said that, there are additional scholarships and fellowships available to graduate students. They again differ from institution to institution, so do your research. I can tell you that here at SUNY Oswego, we offer quite a range of those types of free money or money that is based on opportunities where you connect with research and with faculty. And so in addition to that, we do offer graduate assistantships as well. And so for that, I'm going to pass it off to Laura to share a little bit about the opportunities that not only we have here at SUNY Oswego in graduate assistantships, but that you also find at other institutions.
Yeah, I love talking about GA-ships because quite honestly, and I'll say it, graduate assistantships, and that this really was the pathway to me for graduate school. I was a self-funded student. My parents are hardworking, but it just wasn't in the cards that they had the opportunity to pay for my graduate school and undergraduate school, quite frankly. So graduate assistantships were a really big piece of my puzzle, going back to Kristen's 4 questions. Graduate assistantships, generally speaking, you'll find them across university types, whether they're, kind of small private institutions or large public research-based institutions. Most campuses that offer graduate education offer some form of graduate assistantships. They are positions on campus. They're work positions. They may range from supporting the Office of Learning Services or the Office of Accessibility Resources to my graduate assistantships. You're meeting with Michaela right now. She's our graduate assistant in the Division of Graduate Studies. I have a GA who helps me as a TA with course instruction. I have a different GA that helps me manage my research and kind of everything in between. So graduate assistantships are, in a nutshell, part-time positions that allow graduate students to typically offset the cost of their cost of attendance through tuition scholarships and or a stipend on top of that. They can range in partial reimbursement. Here at Oswego, we're able to waive a few credits of cost or offer a scholarship towards those costs and provide a stipend. In doctoral programs, particularly Ph.D. programs, you'll typically see graduate assistantships that we've provided a complete tuition scholarship in addition to a stipend as well. And so it's important as you're looking at graduate programs to explore. Typically, universities are interested in sharing these experiences with graduate students. Not only is there that financial aspect, but it really gives you an opportunity to develop a set of professional skills that are meant to enrich your training in a program. Some of that may be kind of a direct connection. For example, a student who wants to research learning disabilities like I do, serves as my GA. Others are more kind of generically applicable. My GA-ship as a graduate student was in a center for gifted and talented development, doing screenings with students. And frankly, even though that wasn't my career path at the time, it totally changed my career path. And so it's something to think about and explore as you're looking at these campuses, the range of opportunities that may help you enrich either your career goals or your general professional skills as a part of your graduate education. Many of our students will take advantage of each of these kind of financial products, from taking out some loans, applying for scholarships, working on under a fellowship, and serving as a GA. And Michaela is actually a great example of this type of student. So Michaela, I'm wondering if you could share with us briefly how you've kind of been able to put the pieces of that puzzle together, not only to offset your costs, but enrich your training program. And you're on mute.
Mm-hmm. Of course I am. Okay, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to talk a little bit about that. So I have had the opportunity to, as Laura said, work as a graduate assistant in grad studies, which is a little bit different from my mental health counseling world and my normal world, as I have spent a long time in nonprofit. So that was a draw for me, it being different. And I think you can do yourself so many favors in doing your research, thinking about what's going to work for you. Be really clear about your expectations and what you can offer, again, with time commitments and that type of stuff. And so I was able to find a GA-ship and also a fellowship that I worked with at my job that I had at the time. And that was all through doing research, looking at opportunities that were available, and just seeing one that would work for me and that I didn't have to, go out and get a whole different career to kind of make it work for myself. And it's just been one of the greatest opportunities. So I could definitely talk forever about it. But as Laura said, it helps out, as in it typically pays part of tuition, and then you get a stipend as well, depending on what you're doing. So it's been wonderful. And Laura, I'm just curious if you have anything you want to summarize with that before we move into our last question.
Yeah, it's a great question. One, I would just say, do your due diligence and really think through, coming back to Kristen's point, what is most important for me? For me, it was a full tuition waiver that was really critical. And so I limited my search to those sorts of institutions. Know that it will differ between the size of the institution, whether it's a public or private, whether it's grant funded. And so reaching out to someone like Sharon to ask those questions, career services at both institutions can be really, really great resources. What I want to leave you with is that graduate funding will look a little bit different for every student, and that's a-okay. Know that there are diverse funding options available to you, and it may look a little bit different than your process of simply completing a FAFSA and kind of waiting to see what happens. You may need to take kind of a more proactive approach to really piece together what's going to be the best fit for you and your goals.
Love it. Thank you so much. And I thought this would be just a wonderful question to end with and kind of wrap it all up. Kristen, if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about, in the end, all things considered, do you think a graduate degree is worth it?
Yeah, I do get this question from both students and parents. I think that based on some of the people I think that have described themselves in the chat, for a chunk of people, they know this is what they want to do, and this is necessary for them to get to where they want to be. And I was much like them. I knew by junior year of undergrad, I want to be a college professor. So I need to go to a school that is going to allow me to get into a classroom, to get teaching experience, and I'm going to need to choose a school where I can partner up with faculty and do research so I can publish. So by the time I get to the job market, I have a resume and a vita that speaks to some of these job opportunities. And so my hope is that's the same for you, and that when you're picking a school, that you will pick a graduate opportunity that will meet your needs, and it will give you and set you up for success for the job market. So kind of knowing what the job market is looking for ahead of time, talking to alumni. The best advice I can always give students who are in this space is to go talk to current graduate students and maybe some that are recent grads, and to ask them about their experience, take them out for a virtual coffee or something that gets them talking about things like we're discussing today. What do you wish you would have known, before going, or what were you surprised at? But I think if you get out of it what you want to get out of it and are marketable in the job market, then it's worth it, right? You get to learn and dive in deep to things you're passionate about. And from a financial perspective, is it worth it? Is it worth the cost of perhaps maybe additional loans and those sorts of things? You know, we can look at it discipline by discipline, but in general, those that have a master's degree will make more money over time. This is what we know for sure. So most likely you will make up the financial cost of the degree over the lifetime. In general, we see this is the case. My husband's in computer science. He'll tell you that, you know, when he's hiring those that with a master's degree, they just get offered 10K more and their starting salaries, you know. So over time, those things add up. We see that in education. We see that in multiple disciplines. So over time, I think from a financial perspective, you will win that back. But you want to make sure that it's the right program and that you're getting out of it what you want to get out of it, so you are marketable when the time has come to apply for jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a feeling you would say yes and have the data to back it. So I love it. And I thought before we sort of moved into any other questions people have, and you're welcome to, again, put those in the Q&A if you have anything come to mind. I'm just going to summarize what I took away from, you know, these 10 things that we need to know when we're preparing to apply for graduate school. And number one is it's about fit. So there's many pathways available, and you need, you know, we're going to be thinking about different programs, schools, and different experiences that you want. Number two, graduate degrees are becoming more and more necessary for job consideration and career promotion. Three, choose a program that will give you what you need. So is it research, applied experiences, expertise, networking? Number four, start asking around. And I feel like I heard this in every answer, network. And, you know, start talking to current graduate students, alumni, faculty, find out what other people have experienced. Five, it's never too early to start considering options and exploring program possibilities. And as an older student, I'll just throw in, it's never too late either. I know everyone on here is younger, but. And number six, identify your deal breakers. So full-time, part-time program, online, cost, you know, really think hard about what those deal breakers are. Seven, just keep in mind that graduate school uses holistic admissions. So your GPA is not everything. Nothing is everything. You know, make a case for yourself. And we heard some great advice for how to do that. Number eight, writing matters. So, you know, your statement of interest, your essay, that's critical. Really demonstrate your skill set. Get a proofreader. And number nine, you need to be prepared for a different type of experience than undergrad. And we heard some really great examples about how this differs. And number 10, cost and financial return should be considered, or financial resources should be considered. So student loans work differently at a graduate level. There's assistantships and scholarships that can come into play. Just don't forget to call, reach out, ask questions to those institutions that you are considering answering or considering applying to. And again, if anybody has any questions, anything, feel free to reach out in the chat or reach out through email or any other way that you're comfortable. You can always find us.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Michaela, and congratulations to all the students already on this call making that first step. So, and thank you for Imagine 2021 for organizing this wonderful event.
All right, thank you all so much for participating, and a huge thank you to all of our amazing graduate studies team members. The information that you shared with us today was invaluable, and I know for sure that our students are going to find this super helpful when applying to graduate schools. Students, if you have questions, please throw them either in the chat or the Q&A. Also, please note that you can reach out to these individuals after today. They all work on campus. Well, they all work at SUNY Oswego, whether they're on campus or not is the question. So please feel free to look up their emails in the directory, or if you have a LinkedIn profile, feel free to connect with them on there as well. And feel free to join us tomorrow night for our Target Your Future and Hit Your Target session, where we're going to learn about career competencies that employers are looking for and how you can analyze a job description as well as a graduate school program description so that you can tailor your application materials. This week we've learned a lot about what graduate schools are expecting and what employers are really looking for. So how do you make sure that you can craft those application materials so that you're showing those qualifications and those skills? So join us tomorrow night for our Zoom session. The link to that session, as well as the rest of our sessions, is in the chat and can be found on our Imagine 2021 webpage. If there are no further questions, Let me
Christine, I'd just like to offer, if there's any students on this call that are interested in applying to any graduate program at SUNY Oswego, that if they meet with Sharon Griffin on this call, we will waive their application fee. So that is a $60 value. And Sharon will be able to waive that if anyone on this call is interested in applying for a SUNY Oswego graduate program.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Kristen. That is amazing. I think the students will very much so appreciate that. And students, don't forget, as you're working on, some of your checklist items this week, don't forget to post using @HigherOz and tag some of your friends to win some of the fabulous prizes that we saw at the beginning of this session. All right. I don't see any other questions. Am I missing any? Awesome. Well, thank you guys again so much. This was an amazing session, and we really appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us today. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Take good care. Thank you all.